Hello, my name is Rojo, and today, special treat for me. We're gonna be watching. That's way too much headroom. All right. We're gonna be watching. Oh, now it's too little. Oh god. It's okay. We're gonna be watching the Week 7 Day 2 matchup. Uh, G2 versus Fnatic. I watch LEC very casually, far more casually than I watch any other region really. Kind of just on when I can have it on and watch it sparingly. Um, I know that G2 win this match or game, but I don't really know how. Why we're doing this, and it's always fun to expand horizons. So let's volume down. Let us proceed.
Early game, they're still all about caps, whereas on the other side, Fnatic did not look
Okay,
like
fans aren't that exciting. A lot of excess room. I don't know if I've really gotten used to the pick and ban visual, but oh my gosh, just ban a champion. Okay. um, so Kha'Zix, not something that I see in really any other region. In assassin style, jungler isn't really common right now. There are some assassins that are viable. Evelyn is decently viable. Kha'Zix is pretty good. He received some buffs, not major, but obviously enough for. I believe Selfmade has played it several times, or a few times, not several, but so it's definitely interesting. It might be indicative of what we're trying to see from G2's team. Probably gonna have maybe an Ashe, maybe a Caitlyn, a Phelios, something that's relatively immobile that wants to just be basically a walking turret and kill targets without someone being on top of them. And Kha'Zix is definitely an issue to that. Then Kalista was banned. It's fine. We see it quite often being banned. Strong bottom laner. Thresh. Thresh is interesting because you watch other regions and Thresh is very highly contested or seen in bans. And I don't know if it's necessarily um, necessarily necessary. If it's necessary to do that, but I can see why it has a lot of safety. Is a strong potential initiator, decent CC. Just basically has all the general tools that a support would want. Build is not straightforward, so he can actually build pretty much any pieces he wants. Not just because he is a support, but because he doesn't really need any items to function properly. Then the Syndra ban, another super strong mid laner, makes sense. It's all fine. And then the Senna ban, another target away from the bottom lane, probably indicating that the first pick is going to be an AD carry. Yeah, this should be the Caitlyn should be live on this or buffed on this patch, so probably gonna see that or another, as I said, a strong AD carry, and then the last ban Ezreal, which doesn't really feel like what G2 were going for. Ezreal can kite and can build a fairly large amount of armor to prevent Kha'Zix from killing him. He doesn't really mind playing into Senna, and he doesn't really mind playing into Thresh. So it's a weird ban. It's the one ban that I question on this of the 6. So first pick, Volibear. Okay. Volibear is uh, I have my own thoughts about Volibear. I think he is a decent champion. The issue with him is that when you put him in the jungle, he is low economy, but he's not necessarily the champion itself is not necessarily low economy. It works, but does it actually work in the way that you want it to? Can you just be aggressive and dive, or are you just diving in when you're behind and you're just dying? I just realized are you diving in? Nope, still can't see the arrow. Wait, are you diving and dying when you're going in on Volibear? And then if you're ahead, do you need Volibear to do what you're already trying to do? If he was something that had a good was a good response in top lane, or was being used as a decent response into certain jungle picks, so like if you see an Olaf, you can use Volibear to kind of match the speed, and then he actually scales better than Olaf, so he actually is more useful than the opposing champion. But as a first pick, I don't know if it's necessarily the best. Also, because it's not versatile, he really just has the run at you mode. So he can be defensive in the way that just being threatening can be defensive, but he's not in and of himself threatening, especially from a low economy position like the jungle.
Holes that seems to be missing from Fnatic. And that's not to say that Nemesis can't play it, but for whatever reason, Fnatic don't want to go near.
And I do open Fnatic may very well.
Gangplank and Lee Sin. So these are two incongruent picks. We're already looking at congruity. Congruity is a bit of a problem between Lee Sin and Gangplank, because what Gangplank wants to do is he wants to sit in a place and then he wants to set up barrels to prevent people from walking into him. Or he uses his ultimate to prevent people from escaping or walking towards him. And also, because of the global pressure, he can effectively affect multiple sides of the map without having to leave his lane, which means he actually can gain an advantage by saving his teleport or using his teleport in a different, more lane-specific way. Lee Sin is an extremely aggressive, early game focused jungler. He is probably going to have to do a lot to be effective in this game, especially when you're looking at his matchup in Volibear. Volibear clears significantly faster than pretty much every champion in the game, except for maybe not that significantly faster. At least within the meta, faster than most, except for Olaf. Lee Sin can clear decently fast, but he is gonna probably be behind or have to skip camps in order to get earlier ganks off. And I don't know if the setup is going to be there, because Gangplank actually doesn't lend himself to early ganks because he's pushing the lane in. Because almost no one can actually stand up to him, and he just keeps queuing and getting grass procs off, winning very early trades, and being able to push the lane independently of any other factor. So already there's a bit of incongruity, but
from the conventional, well, I say conventional, we're going back to self-made classic.
Also, Lee Sin scales worse than his counterpart in the Volibear, which, to be fair, we don't know if Volibear is going top, but generally we've seen Volibear only going jungle since his release, basically. Caitlyn Morgana, I mean, this is actually the prediction that we see. Senna is actually able to kind of... isn't really a good matchup into Caitlyn, because Caitlyn outranges her. So where Senna wants to outrange someone in lane and just poke them down and harass them, Caitlyn can actually trade fire, and in fact can trade fire fairly early on, and will get 2 autos for every auto that Senna gets, at least, depending on attack speed and depending on the timing in the lane. And then Morgana, I mean, these two are super strong, annoying core. The only thing that might push them in is Karma Ashe, because Ashe has decent enough range that she can keep Caitlyn at bay, and Karma has more harass than the Morgana does. Together, these three are interesting. It's incongruity. Seems to be the case. Jungle just doesn't seem to be on the same page meta-wise as the rest of the map. And that might be because of the way that people see the jungle role, where it's not necessary for it to do certain things. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to scale. It doesn't have to actually play with your team. It's really just about clearing the camps as fast as possible and being on the map to affect the map as early as possible. So it might be a philosophical issue. I guess if it finds success, it's not. You could argue it's not an issue, but it could be better. So the incongruity is a little weird for me, but we see it all the time, so it's whatever. Morgana does prevent a lot of things, but the thing is, here Morgana isn't preventing anything so far. We have 2 physical damage dealers, so her shield, even if there's no CC, right? Even if she's using Black Shield just to block magic damage, because there's very little or no CC, which isn't likely, but let's assume that that's the case. She's getting no value from that. So far, she's not really gaining value from the DC reduction or nullification. So, I mean, I guess if it's really well timed, she can prevent Lee Sin from kicking someone, but that's about it.
We'll see how
Before secondary ban phase comes
Jhin.
through.
Jhin is an interesting pick. It's something that I think has gotten more popular in the LEC. I think maybe even specifically by Reckless. So I can't imagine that the matchup in lane is super. Like, I don't know what support could go with Jhin and make this feel like, oh yeah, we're a-okay. We're gonna feel really good. But in actuality, what they do have is a really good long range setup with the 2 champions they have. So what they have is Gangplank can set up a ultimate, and then Jhin can set up his ultimate and blast within the slow field, allowing him to hit his targets, allowing extra slows to be placed onto people, and allowing a team to initiate easier. So there is that. There is value in that. Lee Sin doesn't really interact with that too much unless he gets a flank off on that combo. So you hit a target here, and then Lee Sin can flank around, and then maybe there's the interaction, but that requires Lee Sin doing extra things that under different situations you might not have to do, or if you had a different jungler, they wouldn't have to do it all.
Is making sure that he gets Jhin, one of his champions that can play very safe, very far back into the lane, and we already saw how beautiful.
Frostgren is mentioning that he can play safe, so I mean that makes sense because he can use his abilities to CS without having to really get into Morgana and Caitlyn's faces. But I can't imagine he's going to be super comfortable. Okay, you actually see the Zoe ban come out, so there's 2 things I immediately think of. The long range is something that I think Fnatic are considering. So when you have this kind of setup already in the Jhin and the Gangplank, you want to make sure that you have and this is something that you see in poke compositions. When you're building a poke composition, you're trying to monopolize the way that you are trying to do something. You're trying to remove the opponent's options to do what you're trying to do at the same time. Because then if they get ahead, then you're no longer able to do what you wanted to do in the first place, because they are now doing what you wanted to do. So Zoe, super long range mage, can play against the long range of Jhin and Gangplank, and as well the zone control that Gangplank provides. Jhin provides, I guess, some kind of zone control. yeah, he provides a good amount of zone control. Not to the same degree as Gangplank, but he still provides it. Zoe is a pick also that Nemesis might want to remove because of a certain pick he picks up. I believe he plays Corki in this game. So I can imagine that wouldn't be super great of a lane for Corki, but I don't know if it's necessarily outside of the long range idea. I don't know if that's necessary to ban out. And then the Bard you see would actually provide a lot of safety for Jhin, and because he's one of those champions that can play safely, he would lose out on some CS, but he wouldn't lose out on experience if Bard roams around. Actually, he would gain experience relative to the two. But if Jhin is alone, I don't know if the 1v1 with Caitlyn and Jhin works out in Jin's favor. So I don't know if the Bard was a necessary ban. Also, because you have the Morgana, I could also argue that you can prevent Bard from hitting an essential target unless he just hits a multi-man Tempered Fate, in which case, fair enough. Also, it is another takeaway from the long range initiation that Cloud9 that Fnatic seem to be going for, right? So you have Gangplank, you have Jhin, and you'd have the Tempered Fate on top of it. So you'd have a slow field, you'd have an extra slow from Jhin, and then you could Tempered Fate one or more targets.
Ban I also think is quite good here.
So it's actually this is actually a pretty good ban from that perspective.
Last saw tried to deny one of the combos.
Twisted Fate. Twisted Fate is interesting because you could argue that you could just pick it up yourself because you are red side, so you're gonna you get the next pick here. Because it would go along with that long range idea, but maybe they have a hard time. They don't want to play Twisted Fate into these three champions, which I don't necessarily think it's that bad. Twisted Fate could also work on this composition, because Twisted Fate with Caitlyn Morgana is effectively you just can't walk into them. Now, I don't know who's calling for that issue because you're not ever walking into them. You're playing back, or if you are walking into them, they are in a bad position, or not a bad position. They are in a position where you are doing what you want to do, where you're engaging long range CC, and preventing them from being able to come back at you, putting out damage that they can't dish back.
Very difficult though. Obviously, the pike into the Morgana, single binding ever connects, you instantly die. Very vulnerable champion. You have so many tools to keep yourself alive, but in terms of raw stats, your health bar incredibly low. The
Kench provides decent safety for the Jhin. Would prevent a lot of the CC that maybe G2 are looking for. I feel like the Tahm Kench ban actually isn't necessary. And along with the Ezreal is kind of confusing for me. The Twisted Fate, I could see an argument for G2 picking it up, but also I could see an argument for it being picked up here as well. I believe Nemesis was a Twisted Fate specialist at some point, or maybe that's too strong of a word, but I feel like Twisted Fate was one of his stronger champions. So feels like it's something that they would actually want. They do end up picking Corki. I don't know if they pick it here or last. I believe that the next two picks are Ike and Corki, which don't feel congruent with the rest of what they were going for.
Because it's not about the Morgana Pike match.
Because actually, what you see in this, when I'll say what he's the champion. So what you're actually seeing here is 4 different players trying to carry the game. So this is very solo queue-esque. There is logic behind the picks being given. I don't know. We'll get to that in a second, but these 2 picks make sense together, and you could make an argument for this working, for the Lee Sin working. But you see, Gangplank is a carry top laner. Lee Sin, carry jungler. Jin, it's the role is about carrying anyway, but Jin is high damage, um, pretty safe, and can do a lot on his own. Brings legitimate utility to his team. So he's not just dishing out damage; he's also bringing things to his team. And then the Pyke is a carry style support. So there's four already right here. There's four different players that are trying to carry the game, and I don't know if this is an issue with their mentality, their attitudes towards each other or towards the game or whatever, or if it's an issue at all. Maybe it's just what they ended up with, and it just looks this way. But Pyke here doesn't feel like it actually makes perfect sense. It is in the same line as like a bard where you can leave the lane, and affect uh, a lane that you can actually we don't know yet, but it's gonna be Corki. You can leave mid lane, help Corki. You can go make Rift Herald plays, and you're actually genuinely dangerous. The issue is that you're not that the range that Pyke has is shorter than the range that Gangplank has, shorter than the range that Jin has. So the real threats are Jin and Gangplank, and Pyke, who is on a support, who's the support, who's supposed to be, and Pyke being one of those legitimate threats, should be the bigger threat across them, but he's actually shorter range than the other ones. So if you're in range to get hit with a Pyke Q, you're in range to be hit with Jin, you're in range to be hit with Gangplank. So they never walk into you. So, but if you're already, what occasion where are they going to be here where these two aren't already doing what they want to do anyway? The Pyke doesn't really grant anything extra to this composition at all. And in fact, it just doesn't. It really this lane I feel doesn't do well into Caitlyn Morgana, so it feels confusing. Um, to be fair, there were technically 4 support bans. Senna, I don't know if people would categorize her as a support. I would, but the way that she's played is mostly AD or AD oriented, where she gets her support is the actual farmer. In any case, with that many support bans, 3 minimum, 4 if you count Senna, uh, I can see maybe it's. I mean, it's not. It can't even be champion pool issues because there are some. There are other supports that you could pick, but I think that the best supports are now gone. They're now off the table, and now we're almost stuck on Pyke. It just doesn't feel like it's the pick that Hillisang would have wanted to pick up.
From mid laner, it's going to be
It's
there,
just the pick that
and
he
I
was
just have
left
a
with
feeling that it's gonna
out
be
of all of his
Hillisang and
preferences.
Mini constantly blitzing at Caps.
My biggest problem, though, is that Fnatic are just conceding this 2 versus 2. I feel like that when you run Caitlyn Morgana, the biggest thing you have to be careful of is how strong and how dominant that can be.
Vedius is even mentioning the fact that Fnatic are basically giving up the 2v2 because I mean this lane can't play into this. It just gets mollywopped. Camille, something that the LCK has been playing a lot of. It is a potential split pusher. It scales relatively well. There are other duelists that scale better. Mostly Jax, which is seen as the bigger Camille counter. But and obviously, by the way, she doesn't scale better than Gangplank. But what she can do is if she gets a lead, she can really oppress a side lane, preventing Gangplank from farming up and getting to where he wants to be. These are both ramping style champions where once they hit their threshold, they get really, really, really strong. Where the difference is that Gangplank accelerates massively over the course of the game, whereas Camille hits a really good point and then slowly ascends in power throughout the game. Flash, depending on the matchup, may even reach a trough because of the other champions that she's against. It's probably a fine matchup, but I'd still think that Gangplank is going to be fine earlier on, or not just fine, but be able to do what he normally does early on. And depending on how the junglers interact, there could be some. That's going to be the big divide. But because their timings are basically the same on the items that they get, where they both want the exact same first item, Triforce, uh, could be interesting because by the time Gangplank hits his Triforce, he is willing to fight. Camille really wants to fight because that's her big spike, but Gangplank is willing to fight, and if he gets it earlier, then it becomes an issue because Camille is no longer actually gonna be able to fight against the Gangplank if it's a significantly earlier purchase, and then Fnatic can run away with the game.
We already saw it earlier from SK.
Also, because
I
of
feel like
its
when you look at that pipe,
because it's a you pause. I just because it's a low range. It's a melee range champion. Going into Gangplank and Jhin and Pike feels bad if she's behind. So what you're probably gonna see is you're gonna see Selfmade pathing topside, trying to make this Camille feel bad.
you just concede so much.
LeBlanc is interesting, because it doesn't actually help anyone else do anything. It's just on its own. It's just good assassin champion. I feel like her usefulness isn't super high in this composition, but it's whatever. This honestly feels like from G2 that if they don't get a lead, it's literally just all on Caitlyn to do well. And then if and there's too much danger around Caitlyn, right? Like the Black Shield, I don't know if it's going to be enough to prevent things. And there are picks outside of Corki that might have been able to threaten Caitlyn even further. But also because this is all AD, any magic damage champion that Fnatic picks effectively has at least one ability that is going to be negated by Black Shield. So the next pick is going to be Corki. So the Black Shield actually loses out on a lot of its utility because it's not actually doing anything major. It would prevent slows. It can prevent a knockup if well timed. Slows. I guess there's also a snare on Jhin. So there is some value in it, but it's not extreme. Like you're not dodging out on Orianna ultimate. You're not gonna dodge out on a Crystal Arrow. You're not gonna dodge some high impact stun from like a Volibear or otherwise. The big things you're gonna be looking to stop is the Lee Sin Dragon Rage. Is that what it's Dragon Kick, whatever it's called. I think it's called Dragon Rage. And then the Pike Q maybe. But if you're in range to get hit with a Pike Q, you're probably in range to die to these two, as I said.
Pressure, you do have potential gang setup, but with good Black shielding, I think it's going to be very
Sweet.
bad, and then has the added benefit of the
Get the
distortion.
Corki in, let the champions
fall
fall into their
because
place.
LeBlanc typically does what LeBlanc likes to exert, but most important.
So final thoughts on the whole thing. Congruity wise, I feel like Fnatic are probably closer to being a cohesive team. There are some elements that don't really work. It is very light on magic damage, which can be a problem because it means that it's fairly simple to itemize against. Also, the physical damage shield that Camille gets is going to gain a lot of value because it's always going to proc. She's always going to get shielding from basically any target that hits her, or that tries to hit her when she goes in. This means that things like Deadman's on the Volibear can be valuable. I don't really think that there's any itemization for LeBlanc that changes. I mean, maybe in earlier Zonias if things go really bad, but probably not. Nothing, and Zonias is going to actually have a lot of value for Morgana, so you're probably going to see that being built fairly early on, as opposed to Redemption or Shirelias or Locket or Mikhails. Or something. I don't know why you'd pick up a Mikhails into this composition, but you know what I mean. I don't even know what I mean. So the G2 composition, I feel like if they fall behind, it's going to be pretty bad. They do spike into their one item, and then there's a bit of a trough because of Caitlyn, unless she gets really ahead. So it's really down to if the lanes don't go great, G2 feel bad, and then what Fnatic need to do after that, if they can get the lanes going well for them, is avoid G2 for the next like 10 minutes, and then they can actually play the game, and then they can go into them and do what they want to do. Because if they fight them on those one item spikes, then it's going to be a problem.
What I like about this LeBlanc
The lack of magic damage is a little concerning, but it's not the end of the world. This just means that Corki's rockets are going to have a lot of value. All of his abilities are going to have a lot of value because no one's really going to be building MR, and if they do build MR, it's literally only against Corki, so that's value there. They're not going to build MR, but they do. The Corki is long range enough that he actually keeps them at bay at the same time with the Gangplank. So Gangplank and Corki can fire rockets instead of barrels, preventing people from coming into them. Jhin can set up traps if he's early enough. He can hit them with the snare, which would then allow Pyke to come in, Lee Sin to come in and attack people. So they actually have a really good Ruin composition. In terms of optimally speaking, there is some problems. I don't like this and I don't like this, but there's nothing you can play because of the way that Camille and Volibear are. You can play Lee Sin defensively, I guess, and you can play Pyke defensively, I guess. Not the greatest, but it is what it is. So, I mean, here these three are doing something different than these two. And then you have these two doing something different from these three. So quantity-wise, congruency is about the congruity is about the same. But in terms of what they can actually do, like the within the things that they can do, I feel like these three champions don't help these two champions at all. And then you can argue that there is some value that these two champions can bring to these three champions.
is that with LeBlanc plus Volibear, insanely strong 2v2 mid-jungle duo, which they can then use to rotate to bot lane. You can see that G2's game plan here is once again very much about the early game. They can split
Fair
the map
point
up
by
into a
Vedius.
split push state with this composition that they have for themselves, and it feels like when we talk comfort,
There
yeah,
is
Fnatic have got themselves a
weakness
lot
in
of
terms of
comfort.
laning
Gangplank in the top lane,
for the
Corki in
the
middle,
2v2 bottom, but
Lee Sin. But G2 have also got very classic G2 that they found a lot of success with last year.
you can play it if you play it as safe as possible. I think you can skirt past those issues. You do lose out on you're gonna lose out on CS if you're Fnatic bottom lane, but you can play it if you play it safely enough. It probably shouldn't matter. This is always fun. Okay. So it's not a 5-man. It is a 4. Jungle came into his spot. Actually, he didn't even come into his spot because the jungle generally comes around where Volibear is, just obviously on the red side, walking in. The 4-man is not. They're not lining up, But because they're doing it this way, I don't think that they can. The G2 are going to know that something's up. They're going to know that they're generally either on the top side, which is, I think, fairly weird, and there's no actual entrance into the jungle from there, but there is an entrance on this side where they can go unnoticed. They're going to be seen, not because they're actually seen, but they're going to be noticed because G2 are going to see, well, where are they?
Coming out on both sides.
So the value is they get to sneak past and go into the never mind. What were they planning? Was it, okay? It's interesting. And maybe there might have been some information that they had where G2 did some sort of equal cheese. I'm not sure what this is.
Fnatic actually set up the level 1 with the very early 5-man stack into the bot lane ward, just to see what was possibly going to happen from G2, and it actually just looks like a delayed invade, if anything.
And all is quiet on the map, and as long as we've got a brief break here, we might as well enjoy
Ike
some
is
Legacy Kings
around
dynasty.
here, but that's
Fnatic,
not that big of an issue.
semifinals,
Maybe the idea is that Jin can sit up in this bush, and then the entrances are, he'll actually know where G2 are, so he's not going to get needlessly harassed early on, and they can maybe control the lane in the earlier levels. That's a big maybe. I don't think that's doable. Yeah, that's fun. He just walks in the lane, loses like 200 health. It's fine.
And let's kind of theorize, you know, why G2 wouldn't necessarily have to force a split match.
I'm not. I actually don't understand what that is. Let me just take a second while I adjust that. Think about the value of the ward that they just placed. They set up a 4-man for this ward. They beeline it to bottom, and then set up a ward, and then left. I can only imagine that it would help. It would help in establishing maybe some bush control. I don't know. Not even that. There must have been some cheese that they were trying to prevent. And then they figured that they were stronger level 1 maybe. So here, Yanko's started blue, goes to Gromp. On self-made side, he started red. Probably going to go blue Gromp, and then into a bottom lane play. By which point the ward will be dead. So you could also argue that that ward, because they're not going to get the push in, it allows them to know if there's an early play by Yanko. So that's also there's also value in that maybe. But I don't know if Polar Bear would want to do that necessarily.
Pike in terms of the 1v1 or 2v2 matchup in this case of how it's done. So they feel like maybe even to win this 2v2, we don't need to force.
Because he doesn't have the Black Shield early on, you can get some good damage out.
He takes a ton of damage, but then also the fact that
they're trading damage on their supports.
There is actually still a lot of reason why Jankos might want to.
Ooh, that's really good. Was really, really good. The ward didn't help them at all, but maybe there was value in that as well, in that ward being there. It was just a mistake. It was just a mistake by Perks. He walked up. You 100% knew that at level 1, Hylissang had the knife thing, the hook that he throws out, because he hit Mickey at one point, Mickey X. So yeah, it was just a greedy position by him. I mean, we look at it. He literally just walks in. This is just he's also just a pretty good hook.
This is massive from Hylissang. Already getting the flashes early out. Reckless just want to chase the kill. One more shot, he's cleansed out. That's going to be first blood. They're going to look for another one. And this was one of the
really well done.
windows of opportunity to pull ahead in this lane, and Fnatic found it. Wow.
I'm literally trying to set up, you know, they could play around Wonder.
And I mean, see, we have here Gangplank things. I don't know how this necessarily happened. Maybe they had a pan to the top lane at some point.
Even to win
I
this
would just imagine that it
2v2,
was going,
and
you
let's
know,
kind
like
of theorize
Gangplank
now.
things.
Will they be able to? So with the composition, a good bit of poke in the 2 versus 2.
And let's kind of theorize how Morgana does fairly well into Pyke in terms of the
But
1v1 or 2v2
something
matches
severe
against how
happened,
it's done. So I
where
feel like maybe A,
Camille
this
got
2v2
hard
with
chunked and then
Mickey
had to
is split
flash
out to
away,
be aggressive on Morgana Caitlyn. As I say that though, Mickey takes a ton
which
of damage.
has to
But
be a
then
huge
also the fact
mistake
that it's Camille
by
bringing
Wonder.
Pyke up into the top side. There is actually still a lot of reason why Jankos might want to.
Oh! This is massive from Hylissang. Already getting the flashes early on. Reckless just want to chase the kill. One more shot, he's cleansed out. That's going to be first blood. They're going to look for another one. And this was one of the only windows of opportunity to pull ahead in this lane, and Fnatic found it. Wow.
I'm literally trying to set up.
There might be a case for, in this specific matchup, Morgana going Black Shield to prevent this exact thing, because then you can't hook the target, or if the target does get hooked, they're able to more freely walk away. But it's fine to go binding. I can see the logic. It actually adds threat to the level 1 on Morgana, but
Opportunity to pull ahead in this lane, and
you
Fnatic
could
found
argue that because you know that you're gonna have control over the lane, at least past level 1, then you could kind of give up some of that kill potential, not even kill potential, damage potential, on Morgana to provide safety for the lane. But maybe I'm just unnecessarily theorizing. The Wonder has to flash and teleport in. Gangplank putting down a ward tells me he's probably going to sit in the lane. Yeah, he's doing it slowly. He's doing a slow push into a what wave is this? This is third wave. So based on what he's doing here with the barrel, he's probably going to push this hard and then take a recall because Camille can't clear all of these minions. So this is really good for Whippo here. Alternatively, because of this ward, he might just decide he can hunker down and sit here. But getting the recall would be really good because it would allow him to refill his potions. It would actually allow him to trade here using the barrels and using his corrupting potion. Go back, like do like a small thing. Don't waste a lot of time on that. You can hit a Q or something, hit a barrel, or pop the corrupting potion. Hit this barrel when it pops onto the Camille that's teleporting here, and then you can push and leave. Then you can refill, have 3 potions, have extra things. You actually wait. This is the third wave. Because he only has 6 CS. That's unfortunate. He was probably trading CS for damage on Wonder, which did end up he did capitalize on, but okay. Self-made. Yep, self-made. He didn't back. He went Gromp, walked around. Now here on this. And Volibear is actually beelining it to bottom. Obviously, there is this potential timing because you know that this is what Lee Sin wants to do, right? He wants to take the 3 camps and then he wants to try to convert on this play, but he doesn't need to because of how this is going. You could argue that he's trying to escort and that Jankos coming in is kind of threatening, but
bot no flash, no heal on perked. I think he might just be here to cover Jankos looking for a gank.
That's the thing. You don't expect that to happen, especially not in Fnatic versus G2. But here's self-made.
Wait, what is Hylissang doing? Oh my goodness, he smurfed. Never mind. Oh, self-made.
Oh no, that's a tilter.
Oh my.
Okay.
I love Fnatic G2 games.
That's painful. Hylissang actually smurfed this. so hard. Like, it looked like he was just absolutely dicking around. Like, he just was, oh, I don't know what to do. Then he comes up here, uses the stun dashy thing, hits Yankos, gets out. Yankos has to flash out, and then Selfmade, like, hard trolls it.
Fnatic
Oh,
versus
that's a
G2
heartbreaker,
Selfmade.
actually.
Singapore's gonna have the ease, taking his time, though, dashing out. Yanko's not gonna get to safety. They're gonna be able to follow that one up. Guardian proc. Yanko's running for his life. Selfmade flashing in, though. Selfmade caught in the tower, and Yankos lives. Oh no, that's a tilter.
Oh my...
Okay.
I love Fnatic G2 games. What the hell?
Not for this reason, though! This is the opposite! What is going on? Okay, so to kind of summarize, we're 1-1 right now. Due to some pretty crazy kill. I cannot believe Yankos didn't die. Observers, if you can please give us a spot on
saying?
that as we see a bit of support or combat going on.
And Hillsang playing with a bit of
Why did
fire
he
before
stop
taking
his
the
recall?
dash
You
away.
just take the recall.
I just... What?
Let's have a look. Here we go. So
So Yankos is trying to cover for the 3-camp fight. Oh no, he killed the red buff? I thought he didn't get the red buff. Okay, fine. I think because when I hit the freeze frame, when I paused, the buff was still up, while like Lee Sin was walking here. Fine, but okay. So Yankos does 4 camps into this spot. Selfmade does 3. Yankos is covering to prevent Selfmade from being able to do anything, but Selfmade is actually the one who's covering, which is weird. So he actually is going three camps into covering the lane, while Yankos is the one who's actually aggressing. When you would think, okay, he's gonna just full clear, and then maybe do something, but probably not. Or do the 5 camps into a scuttle.
really good read from Selfmade. He knows that this play is coming. Perk's still only level 1. Hellsang just baiting things in. Really good stun, like everything is good. Lands the... Oh, the Guardian!
The Guardian is actually what
Selfmade
saved him
gets
too.
another auto, it's still not enough. He
What is
flashes
happening
in,
top?
and then
Oh,
Yankos,
no.
of course, has the stun.
Oh,
So
no.
the auto doesn't come through. Reckless is hitting Mickey.
What happened top? What was that?
Selfmade gets another auto, it's still not enough.
Okay.
He flashes in,
And then they get the
then
teleport,
Yankos, of course,
so...
has the stun.
Wait, how did LeBlanc get onto that side of him?
So then the auto doesn't
What's
come
going on?
through. Reckless is hitting Mickey.
Hopefully they do a replay of that. That's a tilter.
That's a massive feels bad, man. And that feels like it throws away so much of the advantage that Fnatic just built themselves up. Perks was at 4 CS coming back to that lane, and while level 1
Okay.
was so good for Fnatic, they found that window of opportunity before there were traps, before there was Black Shield. To
Oh,
get kills
Yankos
for
is just
themselves.
putting so much
Threw it away
pressure
right
on
there,
this.
and now
He's
Mickey
putting
and
so
Perks
much
are
of his
very
time
good
into bottom lane.
honestly.
Well, I mean, we're just basically shaking hands on the junglers, just kind of covering.
I mean, this is a result of Selfmade walking up. I think. Wait, who got the scuttle grab? Do I know?
So good for Fnatic. They
Feels bad, man. Mickey,
Well, during the replay, Selfmade, because he's on the map faster, because the death is actually a faster back than the recall. He goes topside. You know that Selfmade was there, so Yankos, instead of going the efficient path of clearing all of the camps that he can, he beelines it to bottom so he can get the scuttle grab and then turn around and then do the camps. Probably comes in, does the scuttle. He could probably have done the Krugs, to be fair, but it's whatever. So he does scuttle. Probably going to go Raptors, Wolves, Gromp. Maybe look for something to top, and then back for items.
that is a feels bad, man.
So in actuality, Selfmade isn't super... doesn't feel like horrendously terrible about it. Because he is actually up in... Oh, he did do the Krugs. I misspoke.
Well, I mean, we're just basically shaking hands on the junglers, just kind of covering.
He did do the Krugs, and then
super
he's
far
going up
forward
to
in the
the
lane.
Scuttle
You
Crab,
got
so
to see some of the little bit of the combo or the attempt
I
to
thought I
combo
saw
there
the
from Perks and
icon.
Mickey. The idea is
So,
they dark
alright,
binding hits,
perfect.
and then you set a trap underneath them, then you proc the headshot.
Perfectly
on top,
fine.
And then you hit them with the
This is
fadeaway Q,
well
and then
played
if they're
by
still alive,
Jankos.
they probably shouldn't be looking to die. And that's
Self-made
the idea of what
obviously
Hilly
doesn't
is
want to just
constantly gonna be fishing for
basically
this
int,
setting,
but
now that Hilly doesn't have that
feels
window,
just fine.
fishing
Corki
level
actually
1
having
find
a
both
good
of
time
them,
in the mid lane
it's much
is
harder
not
to
what
clean
I
out
would have
this
expected
end
into
of the lane phase for
LeBlanc,
Corki,
but
and he's going to be
sure.
swimming around and finding somewhere else to terrorize.
So
And
while
he
a
even
lot
has
of
the cull,
crazy stuff
so
has been happening
the
on
lane,
bot
so
lane,
he's
we also
expecting
have to recognize
to
that the
be able
top
to
lane,
farm
Lupo forcing
fairly
a flash
fine,
out from Wonder,
and then Lee Sin is
Nemesis actually been falling
just
behind Nemesis in the 1v1. Some of the great power
okay,
that Nemesis does have, or on the Corki rather,
trying
is
to
mitigate and play
make
pretty
plays
safe
because
against
that's
Caps, but I think Caps also
the
looked
life
at
of Lee
both
Sin.
bot, and he lost a bit of early CS. You've also got to remember Nemesis using that early teleport as well, so this oppressive looking
Can't
lane right now being
really
handled
do
very
the
well
dragon.
by Nemesis in this match.
Which is very
Um,
important because there have been questions about performance.
because
there have been questions about
you
chip
know that
pool, so the
Caitlyn
fact
and
that
Morgana are
Nemesis
going to
is
show
very
up
comfortable in this lane, that he's
bottom
able
lane
to
and
do
be
a
able
good
to
start.
disrupt
Yes,
it.
part of that is the fact that the bot lane has been so chaotic that attention has been drawn.
So
to
even
it.
if you
That is exactly
expect
the start that this Fnatic would want
Volibear to be
happen.
topside because that's
I mean,
the pathing that he would have
absolutely.
taken, he
You
would
have
have gone
basically
Krugs,
everyone winning their
Scuttle,
lane phases for Fnatic.
Raptors,
When was the last time
Wolves,
you saw that?
uh,
The fact that they got
into
kill bot lane,
Romp,
that,
into, you know,
Fnatic
using a
just talked
sweeper, I
about,
guess. That's what he
Wonder
ended
was
up
getting
doing.
smashed in the first half. Whippo,
You can't
it's been a nuts
go
game
as
in the
Lee Sin.
first
You
5
can't
minutes.
just take the
Trading
dragon or
back
do
and
anything
forth.
on
Fnatic
bottom.
finally able to bounce the wave back here, it would appear.
He really is just going very out of his way to do a bunch of random things, and he's falling further and further behind the Volibear as a result. So now, while he's doing this level 1, no, it'd be level like 3, Gromp,
Is the reckless special here,
he's
but
Volibear's
looks
already
like
on the
Fnatic
Krugs,
now
which
kind
means
of
that he's going to be
using
in time for
rocket
this.
power.
So this is
They
not
have,
going to
Perks and Mickey underneath
pan
the
out,
tower, and Caps
or it will,
just now
because they
coming
let
to
it
lane to
happen.
get an early access point into this Drake.
And it looks like the Fnatic will be able to secure
Fair
this as
enough.
well.
There is definitely a world where they could disrupt this, but it's probably unnecessary. Because it's taking forever. And all the pieces are here. I don't actually know. Is it?
When we talked about G2's composition, a lot of it was about getting early advantages. Perks and Mickey in this 2v2 lane should have had a lot of lane dominance.
They have Perks and Mickey.
Have to keep an eye on the Jhin itemization.
This dragon.
Reckless special here, but it looks like Fnatic now kind of using the rocket.
Okay, I think that they say give it because Caps was pushed under tower as it was started. But I honestly feel like they have all the pieces they want. Maybe also the consideration is Whippo might have teleport that I'm not. No, he didn't have teleport. No, he did. So I guess Gangplank Ultimate is a thing, so he can actually affect the play. So fair enough. There's that. So even though yeah, G2 could have done something, all the pieces, all the bottom side pieces were there. Jungle was there. That could have maybe done something. It was probably unnecessarily risky because of Gangplank. And they were just already behind on the play anyway, so I have no idea why Jankos is just crossing. I don't know if he necessarily needs to. He could
Which is absolutely massive.
cross behind the wave so that he doesn't get seen, but especially because if he's going to go for this this invade, doesn't necessarily need to be known unless they think there's more value in them knowing that he's there, so they don't bother him.
It doesn't feel like we're going to see the same Caps unleashed performance, at least until he's got one item under his belt.
I think it was also about waiting till you had something to work with, particularly maybe
Whippo using the ultimate to clear the wave.
Also level 6, I think.
Wonder is actually tanking the wave so it doesn't get crashed in, because the wave is actually very far away from where it wants to be. Whippo a little aggressive. What was that?
There's more opportunity.
Oh, he just walked right into him. Wait, they knew that Jankos was there.
Start roaming around. That said, Nemesis could very easily match it with Corki.
That's really weird. Because they know this 2v2 doesn't favor them, right? They have to. That's really
Yeah, and there we
troll.
go. It was setup that they were waiting for. Now, Wonder sets it up perfectly.
That's
for
really
Jankos and
weird.
Caps kind of on the back end to find some cleanup there.
And then you have the bottom lane transition up into mid lane, which means that you don't lose out really on experience on the bottom laners, and you can affect the Herald while your LeBlanc goes down bottom. You catch the incoming wave, and you can trade back after a wave or two. They're probably going to get another plate here, so they're going to get 2 plates bottom. I don't know how many plates they're going to get mid. At least 1 probably. Well, with Gangplank there, maybe not, but... Oh, they got 1, okay.
Reckless pushing pretty far forward here along with Hylissang. Hylissang has to be very careful on this one. Very easy for the LeBlanc to watch out if she gets the opportunity.
They'll probably get it, yeah.
Hylissang playing smartly with his cooldowns will not give Caps the opportunity.
I think these lane assignments are really fascinating because this is not conventional. We don't typically see these early swaps come out, and it feels like...
This is actually really cool. I mean, Venice is mentioning how the lane swap isn't super conventional. I actually think it's pretty good, because it prevents you having to recall away the bottom lane from topside, and then putting them back mid, or not, sorry, not mid, but and then putting them back bottom. So what G2 effectively did is they took their mid laner and made a play mid. They took their bottom lane, realized that they were making a play on the top side, moving everyone up. They just moved everyone up a lane, while Wonder stayed in top side, and LeBlanc was going for a reset. So LeBlanc actually doesn't get the best out of this. She does get a kill, so she's feeling okay about it, but she doesn't. It's not really super beneficial, CS wise and experience wise, because I think that she does lose out on things. It depends on the state of the lane when she moved.
Selfmade's going to be in trouble, calling down the... Selfmade here, Jankos level 6, they have the level advantage. Actually tied up his...
She actually left a... She left it pushed. So she actually moved when it was pushing. I don't know what that... There's like a blue dot in the middle of that lane. I don't know what that is. Is that... What is that? I guess it doesn't matter. But, so she pushes the wave, and then she probably missed out on a wave of experience doing that, but doing the recall and making the play here and then taking the recall. But because she isn't necessary to the overall function of this team, you could argue that it's fine. She'll get to where she needs to be anyway, because Fnatic are not necessarily able to build a large amount of MR. In fact, I don't imagine they will build any. Bwipo really can't because he's going to be matched up against Camille. Selfmade probably cannot because he's going to be building Black Cleaver, and I guess he could build a Death Stance, which is a decent amount of MR, but he's not going to be building really... will he build? He might build Merc Treads. Maybe. There's not that much magic damage, but there is a decent amount of DC, so you could argue maybe he could build Death Stance and Merc Treads. Nemesis, at most he's going to have a Merc Treads. Can't really stunt his ability. I guess he could get a Hex Drinker too, but because of the state of everything that's going on, just doesn't seem necessary. Reckless at most gets a QSS, but probably doesn't because he has a cleanse. Probably doesn't need both into fairly minimal CC. I mean, if someone is CCing him, if someone's on top of him, I mean, we're talking about melee range CC. Don't step on a trap. This is the only big one, and the cleanse is enough for it. So, I mean, if someone actually is... If these two are in melee range of him, he's probably dead, so doesn't really need the QSS, so probably won't build it. And Hylissang probably will not be building MR. So there's low chance of MR being built, which means that LeBlanc is going to have some effectiveness without having to necessarily be the strongest member on her team. But this is fine. I actually like the lane. I actually do enjoy this lane swap. I think it's good.
that good setup from G2 enables them to get a couple of early kills.
Of course, as the Herald goes down, though, we have to keep in mind that that should be at least 300 more gold into the pocket of G2. It won't get them to 1,000, but it's going to be solid to have. Is Reckless pushing pretty far
Because it
forward
doesn't
on
sacrifice your bottom lane.
Be very careful.
It only sacrifices about a wave for your mid laner.
But Hylissang playing smartly with his cooldowns will not give Caps the opportunity.
I think these lane assignments are really fascinating because this is not conventional. We don't typically see these early swaps come out.
The Gangplank coming mid is a bit strange, but it's mostly because his lane is pushed and he has nothing to do, so he's just gonna go there and he'll be there. He was there first, so he just ends up taking the wave. A wave clear package by Corki. Actually, Perks is still in the mid lane, so it's a very, very early swap. I don't know if they stay that way, but they probably don't.
Especially when resets kind of get staggered.
I think they're gonna reset here. It's a little weird. Corki actually trades over there, so I actually that's interesting. So what ends up happening is Fnatic are matching the trade, which actually benefits Fnatic more because they're trading on the waves coming into them, so they don't lose out on it basically anything. And Fnatic's bottom lane doesn't really want to play into G2's bottom lane, so that's actually really cool too.
Was like, okay, yeah, I understand my place in the hierarchy. Wanders out of it.
Hylissang shadowing top side. Clear if Wonder got the notification over his head there that Pyke was coming in, but it looks like he's just giving a little bit of space to Bwipo as question mark ping has come down top side.
He's fine.
Finding, but will not find it, anticipating a backstep from Reckless that just did not happen.
I don't know why Caitlyn walked
giving a little bit of space
that way.
From Reckless that just did not happen.
Just seems inefficient.
For now, relatively quiet, but both supports with the new lane assignments, with both teams moving around so much, do seem like they feel more freed up to roam, to look for plays, to try to find these picks.
And the thing is we're kind of on a timer now for the next big Drake fight, and then we have to check in kind of the initial itemization, because no one should have a true, fully completed item. Although, I need to hold it because Hilly fishing.
No.
For it, will not find it, but he's already burned all of his cooldowns. He is forced to flash
Yeah,
out there.
that's not optimal.
Definitely has to feel bad about that one.
At this point of the game state, I feel like Fnatic, when it comes to the big 5v5 over the Drake, if that's what it is, actually have the advantage.
Self-made. He's really trying his darndest.
Ooh, excellent kick.
That's actually a pretty good kick, but that's a big physical damage shield. I mean, he's still dead. The question is, will Jankos be able to get the okay, no, can't. Decent teleport. Actually, again, well done, because Nemesis doesn't actually lose anything because he teleports after he kills the wave and he's already going somewhere else, or he was already moving back. So this is actually fine. They actually swapped back. I want to see how they managed to do that.
That's what it is. Actually have the advantage here with the items that they have. But first, they're going to try to kill Wonder, possibly burn his TP.
Ooh, excellent kick to deny the hookshot wall dive, and now the Hextech ultimate follow-up damage. Wonder trying to make his way out of
the game state. I feel like for the next big Drake.
Yeah, I think that they traded back because
no one should have a fully completed item. Although
Corki finally hits the Manamune.
Will not find it, but he's already burned all of his cooldowns. He is forced to flash out there. Nimbus Cloak as well will take him out to safety, but definitely has to feel bad about that one.
At this point of the game state, I feel like Fnatic, when it comes to the big 5v5 over the Drake, if that's what it is, actually have the advantage here with the items.
So outside of self-made, pretty much everyone is playing fine. Bwipo kind of didn't need to walk in and set up that play when he walked in that 2v2, but pretty much everyone else is playing well on Fnatic. And outside of that one mistake, Bwipo playing fine too, so seems fine.
And I think the fact that Fnatic is willing to make these plays, keeping the gold very even this early into the game, is definitely going to benefit them.
I actually think it's very interesting that G2 continuously push away from taking the 2v2, because it's actually not super to their benefit, because I feel like they want to take that 2v2. But I mean, in this case, you actually create a situation where it's very situational. Both of the times that they do it, it's a situational condition. There are specific conditions where it's not necessarily like this is what we want to do, but this is what the game is telling us we can do, which I think is really, really cool when teams are trying to respond to the game state more so than just creating set plays. So in this case, here, because Nemesis leaves the mid lane to teleport to this play, right? Caitlyn can push the wave. The wave is pushed into the tower, and she can say, well, if he's going to leave the lane, we can come in and we can make a play here. Using the Rift Herald, we might be able to get first tower. So it doesn't help. Really importantly, it doesn't help Caps at all. Caps getting the kind of the short end of all of these movements. Because right now he's just not doing anything, and then he's not gonna get the farm later. So he actually ends up becoming. He ends up moving here to take the minions on this in this wave. So Caps is getting the short end of the stick, and I think that most of the time you won't see a mid laner just willingly lose out on so much farm and experience. But I think it's actually for the good of the team, actually a genuinely good play, because this is good. Because as I said, LeBlanc is going to be effective pretty much no matter what, because they're not really going to build MR. And Perks is kind of like their insurance policy. I think they lose out. Yeah, they lose this. So that, I mean, the extra resistance. Wow.
That's surprising.
I mean, they literally just tanked Gangplank ultimate, took the tower, and Perks had the wherewithal to use his ultimate on Nemesis. So that was just well scouted, just in general. G2 are playing really, really well, actually. Outside of Perks making that mistake very early on at level 1, and maybe you could argue Yanko's going for an unnecessary play, but it ended up working out in their favor, where Yanko's probably could have just just done his camps in the same spot. I think it's fine. Because what Yankos could have done is Raptors into red into bottom scuttle, because the timing would have been really suboptimal for Selfmade, because he wouldn't have been able to make a play. Here he would have just sat here, and then he would have kind of walked over here. I don't necessarily know what happens if they meet each other. Although by the time, based on what happened in the bottom lane, I guess his movement is, I guess, an adaptation to what happened in the bottom lane. So maybe he actually wanted to do the Raptor into red into Scuttle play, but he ended up making the decision to go down because of what happened and because Fnatic was pushed in or pushed up. In any case, Fnatic are now going for this dragon, which is very interesting. There is actually a man disadvantage here, but they're allowed to do this because G2 aren't necessarily interested in going for this.
Up to that. Well, I think what's the weirdest thing that's surprising.
Really unfortunate.
I wonder what Caps was up to there. Well, I think what's the weirdest thing is why is Caps there? Because when we look at the lane states, like there's no real reason.
Each of these dragons is actually kind of important for G2, and the fact that they're giving them up is a little interesting, but it makes sense. You're having people reset, so in this case, you're having people reset. It's a whatever situation, and the previous one they apparently weren't even looking for it anyway, and even in a case where they might have been able to go for it, they basically just chose not to.
But as we look at it, gold 1K now.
Okay. Now it is Cloud Drake, which wouldn't benefit G2 basically at all. I guess you could argue there's some value in the extra movement speed because of how these two work, and then there's an assassin. There's actually, you know what? There's a lot of value. Never mind. Changed my mind. It's actually pretty good. It benefits both teams pretty significantly. And the extra ultimates are pretty. The extra ultimate cooldown is pretty good. On Wonder and Yankos, Ace in the Hole's kind of value. There's and then on this side it's kind of the same story, maybe to a lesser degree, or it's about the same actually. Yeah, this is pretty fun. This is a good dragon for both teams. They're fine. I'm sure that they would both rather. G2 would probably have rather had the Ocean Drake,
Thing is that Bwipo had just used its
and
ultimate
Fnatic probably would have rather had the Infernal,
Herald in the mid lane. You know, maybe if he hadn't done that and he has ultimate there,
because it would play into their composition as well as play against their composition, respectively. But kind of a whatever situation. Okay.
Even the Pike, the downtime between.
Don't think he can match the pressure of Yankos. Picks like that, kill score definitely in their favor, but definitely need one.
So they kill the dragon and Hylissang immediately moves up. Not really seen until here.
But as we look at it, gold 1K now in G2's favor on the back.
Okay, they see that Yankos is doing this. Yankos has to leave. Top lane is going okay. Hylissang making this play. It's actually well scouted by Hylissang.
Thing is that Bwipo had just used its ultimate defensively to try to clear out around the Herald in the mid lane. You know, maybe if he hadn't done that and he has ultimate there, they try to chase onto that with self-made in the wings and try to force a kill.
I will say that this
without Pike, Jhin is just going to be forced to sit under tower. He cannot go past it. But here they actually do get extra value on the plates for Bwipo. Gonna get another plate here. I think they should be able to get another plate. Yeah. Apps is not having a great time.
I think you're completely right, Betty. Just anytime you can reduce the cooldown on a GP ult, you're just gonna have a great game. That said, we might have a dive here on the bottom side as Nemesis feels good in these trades.
I don't think that's doable. This is 3v2. Hylissang is kind of not able to really do anything. He's just dancing around. Selfmade is way too weak. The levels are actually pretty even in terms of junglers, but the extra value that Yankos had, I mean, he has a Giants build and a completed Ninja Tabbies. A lot of value, and they couldn't dive Nemesis. The champions that were there just didn't have the tools to do it. Okay, Umbral Glaive on Hylissang, which means that there's just... I didn't even think about the fact that he goes lethality, so there's even more value added onto getting every bit of armor. Wait, did they not get this last plate?
Here comes the engage from Wonder, misses the stun, of course doesn't have vision, but a really good knockback from Hylissang actually gets Wonder out of the ultimate, which means he can run to safety, but then of course he runs out of those mobility tools, and then G2's like, okay, now we can commit.
Hylissang greeted for that last damage, because he knew that the plate was going to die to the minions, so he wanted the plate gold, but he needlessly greeted for it. That feels really bad.
He flashes to the side of the Phantom Undertow because while he can't see Pike, he can see the particle. And so he knows that if he gets stunned by that, he won't be able to follow up with ulti onto Hylissang. But because he flashes to the side of it, still getting the extended range from the follow-up hookshot, he is able to land the following ult onto Hylissang, and they can secure the kill. Ultimately, very small thing, but big in the scheme of that play. And now we've got Wonder, who was getting bullied a little bit earlier on, matching Bwipo in the Triforce.
And I think that's a really good
and I mean, Wonder has had a pretty good amount of help, so mostly from self-made. But Bwipo kind of has fallen now behind. They actually are matching, but Wonder is in the lead. He has the extra Vampiric Scepter. And now they both have the Triforce. So, I mean, this is the case of if Camille is behind, it's going to feel real bad. but because she wasn't actually pushed behind, she feels fine, and her team is actually pretty okay, like pretty good in the lead. That Volibear is pretty massive too, basically unkillable by everyone on Fnatic.
Definitely need to be careful about giving up too much vision control, as the third Drake will be on the table in less than a minute.
And here, I mean, Jhin can't actually walk up to anywhere. Basically has to constantly bring this wave in. You could argue for freeze where he actually tanks it a little bit and then lets the wave come in, but it wasn't actually that long. He could have maybe done something there.
Of criticism right now, very justifiably so. But watch where Hilly kind of spends his time. He spends a ton of time with flippos. Sometimes
He could have maybe held it right about here, and then minions would just keep funneling and dying and dying and dying that G2 can't pick up on, or can't pick up. So it would just made a funnel to Jhin fairly safely with the 4 minions that he had. He just didn't do, which is unfortunate. I don't know what plays they're looking for. 27 seconds until. Is that what that is?
They have and how they approach their lane assignments because of a guy.
I think so, yeah.
Hilly.
It's 27 seconds until Dragon. You could argue that you just don't go for it and you just maintain the freeze.
Watch where Hilly kind of spends his time. He spends a ton of time with flippos.
You create the freeze in mid lane and then you just maintain it. But
he actually spends the least
doesn't seem to be the call.
Any other support in the league. Whereas Mickey, obviously also because of
I don't think they can go for this anyway.
is tethered to perks. So this gives Fnatic so much more
or if they do, it's very, very greedy.
And versatility about where their lane assignments are and how they attack you in those creative lane assignments that Vidius was talking about earlier.
Meanwhile, G2 right now already starting to split up the map, but they're being forced to group because they know this Drake is an important one. Wonder's now coming down, hit that level 11 mark. We can see that Nemesis has the package. This is going to be a big fight. Let's see.
I remember this. This is very unfortunate.
Wonder's gonna get in trouble. Now there's the reset for Hillsing. They have to be careful. There's so much gold will go to Fnatic if they can find this fight advantage. Hillsing still has the reset up.
This was so uncoordinated. I am just blown away.
This is going to be a big fight. Let's see if
Nemesis was.
Running forward. He'll drop the Herald in the mid lane.
Oh, I see. Oh, that's unfortunate. So here's the problem. I feel like this had to have been a misclick because if he does it this way, he'll end up like right here, and the only person who can hit him is Jankos, and he can like flash behind the ultimatum. He can flash away from Jankos if he needs to. So once he gets hit with this, he reflexively uses the package to prevent himself from getting locked down and getting killed by Caps here. But he goes here instead of here. If he does this, they actually might be able to play this properly, because what will end up happening is they'll kill the Camille pretty much the exact same. It won't really change. In fact, they'll probably even kill it faster because Corki will be able to hit Camille. But if he comes here, he'll end up here, flash away from the Jankos. Then you set up the Gangplank ultimate and the Jhin ultimate so that they can't walk into you. With the 4-man versus the 5-man, you can actually get the dragon, which will put you one step closer to Cloud Soul, which is pretty good. Not super great like the other souls might have been, but for this composition, it's pretty good. So that's just really unfortunate. It almost feels minor, but this is like a pretty big mistake. I almost want to say it's minor, but it's pretty big. It's literally the usage of one spell being different, and then the play just is so much better for Fnatic. And then as time goes on, they're just getting stronger and stronger. All the mistakes could have been erased. So all of Selfmade's problems and all of Hylissang's problems that they kind of brought onto the game, which weren't... I mean, they were pretty bad, but you could excuse them if this play goes better, if he goes here, and then he can play with his team. Then you use Gangplank and Jin. Yeah, but I wouldn't put it. Obviously, I wouldn't put it all. I wouldn't put this game on Nemesis doing this one play. There were some other problems that happened. And G2's side, they actually played it pretty well. Macro-wise, for sure. I haven't been paying as much attention to their micro, but there hasn't been any like travesties that have occurred, except for perks. Oh, that's really unfortunate.
Another one drops and G2 suddenly in charge of the fight. Flash for the change, but now Selfie trying to turn it right back. Hillsang trying to pull him over the wall, but Yankos there to body block, there to make sure that nothing else can happen. Fnatic fishing for a massive play, but they're getting nothing done as the Herald tears through the mid lane.
Fnatic lost so much in this fight. Even if they get the fadeaway kill on Mickey, it's still not worth it. And
they're not even gonna get the kill.
Caps is fishing for everyone though, because Selfmade's burning. They're gonna grab another.
That's so unfortunate. It gets worse and worse.
Playing at their own pace. Tempo.
And G2 just obliterate Fnatic.
That went from oh god, oh, and the Herald killed the mid lane too. Oh, that's just okay. Oh, it's just it's a disaster. Oh, everything was just so poor.
For a massive play, but they're getting nothing done as the Herald tears through the mid lane.
They need to like meditate or something. This would be such a tilting game. I cannot imagine the feel of Fnatic watching this game back. I honestly don't even know if I would review this. I mean, it's just there's so many things wrong. You just skip over this part. You're just like, nah, we don't. And then we got a 4K goal. We were behind 4K. We don't care how. We skip over this. Don't worry. Don't worry about it. All of this was just, oh god. Oh, that's suck. You can only imagine that. I feel bad watching this. They must have felt so bad after this game.
They're gonna lose so many towers, and Nemesis with that blunder cost Fnatic a lot.
Okay, Caitlyn's strong, but Corki, a strong champion. I actually don't know if he needs a Hex Drinker. I don't know if that's super good, but Lee Sin did actually go for the
Brutal start to the fight.
Merc Shreds.
It felt like there's no way they lose this. They've got all the cooldowns they need, but we look at the start here, and things just right off the bat are not looking good.
Had to have been a misclick. There's no way he thought that was the way to go.
Simply a misclick, or he sees the binding coming through, and he just wants to get out of there so that he doesn't get rooted down. But either way,
I mean, Vedis is looking at it as a misclick too. I think it's a misclick. I think you'd want a package to your team at that point, from where he's at. Because if he's alive, I honestly think that this fight goes so much better for Fnatic. Or they potentially, I mean, they play the 4v5, right? And then with Corki,
Once can reset again, a ton more gold goes into their pocket, but G2 play perfectly on the edge to make sure that Hillsang gets no more value.
And then I haven't the slightest idea how this happens.
Up against Caps is Big Alt comes in. He's gonna take his time with this one. Hillsang just getting walked down here. Rare that you see a Pyke get walked down like that, but there you go. Caps unstoppable. That's a 14 stacks Medjai's, and that might be the final nail in the coffin.
And now things are really starting to come undone for Fnatic here. Haley,
and this is a very long lane, and it's fairly difficult to siege. The extra damage, the charge damage on the inhib tower isn't gonna get used, I don't think, because it does regen, I believe. Fairly slow, but I don't think that G2 are going to be in a position to siege it fast enough. Is I think it regens. I don't know why I'm second guessing. I know for a fact it regens. I know for a fact it does. I don't know the rate that it regens though.
A lot of agency in this game. They
What
have
can Fnatic do at this point?
hit a lot of items that are extremely valuable for them. You can see the Storm Razors coming through.
I mean, 4K is pretty bad.
I know we were
4K
talking a lot about
down is
Frost, and
3K
how
down
this
is
a bit of a shift that we
pretty
typically
bad.
see, but it gets rid of that mid-game lull that you often see from a Caitlyn, and now G2 looking to invade.
Hookshot, wall dive to get things kicked off. They're fighting for multiple
They can try to play as slowly as possible and get away from everything that G2 can do.
Will not go through in the end though. Incredibly low. Could be in
Okay.
trouble. Curtain call comes out to dissuade any further fall.
No. Curtain call really doesn't do anything. It's also specifically only hitting the one target with a massive amount of armor. So,
But there's nothing that is really accosted there from G2 is Hilly. Because if they get the kills there and then they quickly turn it around to Baron because they're trying to set up for picks, you know, it'd be one thing if it was a giant fight.
I mean,
but they knew that Nemesis
I don't
was
even know if
there,
G2
so
really need to go
if
for
they
that
get the
play,
kills there,
but
then you
because
know
they're
it's
in
the
such a
Baron,
commanding
that's basically
position,
game over. So I actually like the fact that G2 are continuing to
it's
push their advantage,
pretty fine
really
to go
fishing
for
see
it.
if they can find Fnatic out of position.
And I think what's really interesting about
Because
this game
what
is
Fnatic want to do is they just want to slow the game
as we get to
down
the mid
to a
late
crawl,
stages,
so they don't have to do anything.
Fnatic versus G2 has always been an interesting one. This year, obviously G2
Are continuing to push their advantage and really fishing to see if they can find Fnatic out of position.
And I think what's really interesting about this game is that, you know, as we're getting to the mid to late stages, Fnatic versus G2 has always been an interesting one. And this year,
Yeah.
obviously G2 has
I
had
thought-
Fnatic's number. But at
I thought
the beginning of
they
this
were the
game,
exact
we
same
talked a
wave.
lot
It's not the
about
same wave.
These two mid laners and how when you look at Caps versus Nemesis, there's
Maybe
going to be
you
a
can
lot of
hold
stakes on it,
that
especially when you look at how Caps
for a
has
bit
been
longer, because he
by
can't
far
walk
the
into.
best performing player on this
He
G2
can't go
roster.
past
In a
his
moment
tower
that mattered
basically,
the most, it was
because everyone is a
Nemesis's
big threat
falter
to
that cost
to
Fnatic
Corki.
potentially the game, or at the very least one of the most pivotal team fights that we've seen so far in this game.
And you have to remember what this game means, because obviously Fnatic G2, it has a lot of history, it's a big rivalry, but remember that the race for playoffs is the more immediate challenge.
So maybe he can
for these
hold
players,
it,
and you
but
heard it from
it'll
Fnatic
end
earlier,
up just
95%
going
of
forward
the
'cause it's the cannon wave.
scenarios, if Fnatic wins 85% of those scenarios, Fnatic make
I don't think they
playoffs.
contest
That is
any
a huge
dragons.
jump from where they're currently hovering
The only thing they
around
can really
75.
contest is
Massive
the
difference,
Baron,
and this could have been the game that made them sit comfortable, feel good about the rest of
and
the
only
season,
because
instead,
it's
they could be in
game
dire
ending
straits
if
coming into the Super
G2
Bowl.
get it.
Has there ever been a timeline where G2 and Fnatic didn't make playoffs?
I'm just gonna say no.
I'm gonna say
because
no.
it just doesn't feel possible.
It doesn't feel possible.
It doesn't. I mean, I know it is,
there
but
have
it
been
doesn't feel
times-
possible.
Trust me, there have been times where Fnatic and G2 have been knocked out very early in playoffs.
Yes.
But there have been, I don't think there's ever been a time where they haven't made it.
Okay.
We see
Wonder almost
Nemesis
died.
Whippo looking for a pick. Oh, but Perks answers back.
Oh, big damage
And
from
then
Rory,
Whippo's
now
too
Whippo
far
going
forward.
trying to get the fight kicked off. Whippo ticking down, and Cap's gonna be dominating now.
Ignite
Nemesis tries to
off
fight
of the
back.
LeBlanc, ends
So
up killing
Shield the Cap now,
Gangplank.
just hunting for blood. This is a very big LeBlanc. I don't know how many
Very
members
aggressive.
she has, but more than enough to one-shot anybody who steps wrong up against her. And now G2 will push
You know,
her on the
alternatively
outside.
to
The
the
thing
dragon
about
play,
optimization on
and just
Caitlyn,
in
like
general,
maybe
they
leaning
could have
into the Storm Razors,
chosen to
especially
give
with
up
the
the
LeBlanc, is that
first
she works like a perfect
that
champion.
first
It is
Cloud
all
Drake
about
and
kind of the slower
get
headshot,
a
auto attacks that
a
are
bit
coming
stronger.
out.
I mean, they
And
didn't even
in
have
past,
the
if it's a
Triforce on
LeBlanc, it's basically
Corki,
like
so it was
poke,
just
poke, dead.
it was just unfortunate timing.
That's
I
how you
genuinely
kill
think they
these
could have
guys.
won that
And
or played
I
it
feel like we're
better
beginning to
from the
see
position
how
that
good
G2
Caps
had.
can be when he gets a slight lead on this
Had given them,
with
but
6-0 and
Slight
lane-
lead?
His laning phase was tough. He was struggling in the 1 versus 1 and he was falling a little bit behind, but the guy hasn't faltered so far, and as you rightly said, Frost, he's utilizing the poke well with his counterpart.
I respect your solo queue mental fortitude so much. You see the enemy LeBlanc like 603, like DW guys, slight lead. We scale.
Yeah, but that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, okay, Corki's now got the upgraded Mura Mana, the Trinity Force.
I mean,
the agility,
Vedis is
and
right.
one
They
versus
do
one.
actually
Corki
scale.
can do some serious
It's the problem of
damage.
you're not gonna get there.
It's not really a 1v1.
You're not gonna get there
And
if
there's another problem. So
G2
one of the things that you guys have talked about
have
more
anything to
this
say about it.
season as
Now the game is actually kind of slowed.
concept of agency.
Um,
Everybody has CC. Fnatic's comp, 3 members have CC. Jin and Lee Sin, not a ton of it. So I feel like while Fnatic definitely are going to get stronger, definitely are going to feel good about these item spikes coming in, it's very hard for them to pick a fight on quote-unquote their terms.
Hillsang is just wandering around and dying. I don't know what that is. Definitely not helping the game. Jankos could have probably positioned that to block the tower, but it's fine, I guess. Wait, maybe it's not fine. Wait, that's the wrong team's.
Just like that! No! What?
The irony is you say a little bit of redemption, and then it's redemption that kills
I
him.
can't claim big brain. That was was unintentional. That was cruel twist of fate there.
I would say he thought it was his. I don't know.
I mean, he had to have thought it was his. There's no way he just walks into a redemption.
Yes, there's two big shutdowns that just happened on exactly who you wanted to happen. The Gangplank as well as
I don't know.
and the fact
That's
that
just
Capsule
bad.
has a ton of on the Magus. Still sitting on 10.
There's just
Still
so
got
many.
the
There's so
full
many. They're
range.
clearly just so
Massive
tilted out of their
for Fnatic.
goddamn minds.
If we talk
They're
about
just
kind of
so.
the two pivotal oh no.
Oh, boop, boop, boop.
Okay.
We talk about the two
Yeah, I mean
biggest
they're just gone.
points in this game.
They're just ready
It's been
to
Nemesis, Valkyrie
leave,
into his death
go
on
home,
Jack
get a
Fight,
sandwich.
And then Nemesis and Bwipo picking up those two big shutdowns. So maybe this opens the door back for Fnatic to get their foot in this game.
They could actually have gotten that would have been so bad for G2 if Porky actually lives there
Zoom out to safety, but no, Nemesis. Oh,
and he walks back in.
but he goes into the redemption and dies just like that. No.
And if we talk about the big two pivotal oh no.
And then Hylissang is just walking in, and this is the problem. This is the problem with Pyke, because when he's behind, he feels really behind.
And then Nemesis and Bwipo picking up those two big shutdowns.
I mean, Lee Sin is the same problem. This is where the incongruity happened. A best case scenario, they feel better than how G2 would feel if they were behind, because then it's like an entire half of the map. The like three presumably like attempting to carry champions would feel bad, whereas it's the jungler and the support on Fnatic that would feel bad. But
Mickey now completing the Shurelias as well means that this bot lane for G2 is like pretty much at its strongest point.
There's also just the issue of
I mean, Hylissang has to make he doesn't have to make plays, but he has to move in a way that doesn't help the rest of his team, or he's moving in a way that doesn't have his team being just aggressive and wandering around. Okay, Jankos is not gonna die here. He's just unkillable.
Maybe? No, not going to connect there, and the Shurelias will just ferry the rest of G2 out to safety. I take it back, guys. He's unkillable. I don't know what they do.
well,
The only one that can really do damage to Jankos is Nemesis. Alternatively, you could argue that you don't really need to bother with Jankos. You could just leave him alone. Give him the old all my friends are dead syndrome.
Is also a really big deal.
But
Well, not only does he have 2 levels over self-made, basically making this Lee Sin pick pretty invaluable at this point in the
the word
game.
you're looking for is worthless.
Yeah. I was trying to be nice. But yes, means that Jankos is going to be a very solid front line that's difficult for Fnatic to get through. And right now, they're just doing what they can to survive as Wonder goes in.
okay, Wonder really didn't do anything. Okay.
With the binding down, he can feel free to dash forward. Hook coming out, will he flash to complete? No.
Just heal up everything that was done to them, and G2 feel fine. Curtain Call could have been used to add on some extra damage and potentially get that fight going, but
And right now, G2 are just gaining full control over the top side jungle. Observers, if we can quickly look at the vision that Fnatic see right now. Let's see how much of the map. You can see it's pretty dark for Fnatic.
I mean, if Fnatic were actually able to slow the game down, I think they could potentially still come back.
They're doing what they can to make sure that they can maintain some semblance of control.
And one of the best things that G2 have done this game is how often they're finding Hilly when he's trying to lay down that vision for Fnatic or find these deep flanks. Think of how many times you've seen Wonder or Caps finding Hilly in a jungle and then just blowing him up. And that's part of the reason why the map is still so dark for Fnatic. Now, observers showing us that Nemesis is waiting for the perfect moment to
Nemesis
grab that
has his
package
package.
just in time
This
for Fnatic to
could,
slide G2's
it's probably not
darkness
going to go
down.
well,
So
but it
that
could
means
be
this is
okay
your
for
moment.
Fnatic.
This may be the
They
best
are
shot that you
kind
have
of reaching a
come
really good point, and Selfmade is just immediately dead.
Okay.
Here comes Caps.
I
Now,
take it back.
Nemesis though trying to fire back. Nemesis does a ton of damage. Wonder getting absolutely shredded here, but now Perks is in the midst of the fight. He's
Wait,
cutting
can
through
he-
Nemesis just like that. Jankos leaping out to safety with the ultimate, but they're
He
just
can't
getting
leave the
blocked.
Hextech
No one's getting the
ultimatum
barrier shut down yet
with the
another
package.
shutdown on the Camille, and here comes the curtain call. Perks
Curtain
getting
Call is
here.
not going to do anything. Why is it doing no damage to Mickey? What does Mickey have that prevent? What?
They both sides will retreat. However, 2 kills.
Ninja Tabby,
Fnatic
Aurelius and
losing 2
Redemption?
members in the exchange.
But Fnatic
Just did
do
nothing.
stop G2 doing the Baron.
He was
So they're
just-
gonna walk
he just
away
didn't
pretty
care.
content with that. The Drake is alive. They're probably not going to be able to contest that objective, but I gotta give a shout out to Caps, man. That The target selection there was beautiful. He didn't try and execute Reckless. He didn't try and go for Nemesis. His eyes were on the jungler, the Smite Steal. He doesn't want to run that risk at all. And look, both of them are right next to each other. He's like, no, 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 no Smite Steal allowed. You will die. Not only is that an easy kill because he's 5 levels behind Caps, but the target selection was just smart. Now Wonder clearly here trying to set up and lock down the Corki, who can't get away using the package because of that ultimate, then allows Perks and Yankus to come in from behind. And helps
It was well played by Wonder, well played by Caps. I mean, at this point, there's just very little that Fnatic can do because they have to walk into plays like that.
And I want to bring it back to something we talked about in the draft, which was kind of the idea that
And now they got another Cloud Dragon.
respected that. And at first I was like,
I thought I missed it, but I looked at the timer. I love doing that. Just absolutely love just being like, oh yeah, wait, where did they get that dragon? And having to rewind, but okay, it's all good. They happen during replay. You actually see the haunting guys on the Gangplank, which does potentially do more damage because of the passive, the madness passive that it gives. It's probably less damage overall for Gangplank's kit, but does more damage for his ultimate.
Of course, always posturing towards this Baron, trying to threaten. Caps will not get spotted out by that ward there, or not the ward, rather the trap. They're trying to finish this one. Good damage down on the Caps. Now the current call comes in. Caps needs to be careful. Wonder can leap into body block. The clone's gonna block one more shot for him. Wonder's gonna block the other one. The redemption's gonna come in to heal him up. Oh, that's gonna be that's it. Hillsang can't get out of that.
Hillsang gets caught again. I don't even know. Selfmade gets caught again. Whippo's in a bad position. Now the 3 congruent champions are together, but I mean it's 3v5.
And again, I thought Fnatic found a great opportunity there. Getting that chunk onto Caps would have been massive. It would have bought Fnatic.
And now the game, and they've both died 6 times, by the way. It has nothing to do with the congruity of their champions versus the others, but
there wasn't enough follow-up. G2 are gonna take the Baron off of this. They're looking to extend the win record this year to 7-0.
I don't know if Caps needs to do anything here. I'm not entirely sure why he's just looking for some nonsense.
This guy on your screen in particular. I mean, you can see it in the KDA, but he's everywhere. Fnatic can't go anywhere near their jungle. Caps just immediately deletes them. Level 17 on both the carries.
So even though LeBlanc is down like 70 CS, at this point, it doesn't really matter. LeBlanc is going to be LeBlanc no matter what. Whippo can't really do anything. I mean, he just dies. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it does more damage if you go IE into Leandre's, but his ultimate might do more damage. Because his ultimate doesn't really interact with crit. He actually face plants into the thing with his distortion, so that's fun.
Showing that even the best players can fumble. Doesn't have the W here, and then he takes the barrel to the face.
Okay, takes a lot of damage. Nearly dies. None. Fnatic get really committed. Hillsang is just waffling around here. Not entirely sure what the purpose of that is. See with the binding. Good binding. And then Selfmade tries to make a play because, I mean, what else is he gonna do? Can't really do anything else. Then they with the Baron, they just take the towers. Who got a static shiv? Why do they have a... Who has a static shiv? Okay. I'm never gonna find out who has a static shiv. I know, I'm going back. No, I wanna know. Who... Jhin? You know what? I'm not actually that familiar with Jhin. I just realized he went with the full energized build. I don't know if that's necessarily the Jhin build, because he has fleet footwork, which is an energized thing, and then he has 3 energized. He went full energized. I don't know if that's necessarily the build that Jhin normally goes. It doesn't seem actually that terrible, but Shiv is just so uncommonly seen across the board that I'm not super familiar with Jhin, so I don't know if that's necessarily the build. Maybe he's just memeing at that point.
option, shredding through every single opponent. Reckless gonna flash back, wants to get something, but he's only hitting a clone, and there's nothing left. Triple kill for Perks coming through on the Caitlyn, and G2 can just
Perhaps
walk
this
into
clone
the
use.
base.
And once again, G2 completely
I don't.
And in 2020,
I was gonna say it's actually pretty good, but then I kind of thought about it more and I was like, eh, it's.
7-0 in the head-to-head match.
He's also like super in the lead. There were 34 kills in a 34-minute game, so you know it benefits LeBlanc. It was actually a really interesting game. There was a lot of cool things going on. There was the swaps that happened that were really cool. I think that if the micro was slightly better by Fnatic or more patient, they actually might just be able to win this game. It would be a longer game. It probably wouldn't actually be that much longer than the game timer here, 34:30. But I think that it feels like this was actually a fairly slow snowball because of the way that Fnatic's composition is supposed to play. They're supposed to actually like slow the game down when in these cases, but then they weren't really allowed to slow the game down because of the way that G2 played it, as well as the way that some of their members played it. So I mean, I feel like if they do well in that dragon fight is winnable. I think, especially given the position that everyone was in. So if they can get that dragon fight, they end up getting third dragon. I think they might actually be able to run away with the game. And it would be just about the same game timer, if not slightly slower, shorter. So yeah, it's a bit of a heartbreak when you look at. They had all the tools, or they had a lot of the tools they would have needed, but they just kind of fumbled them a little bit. I feel like that might be a harsh criticism, but overall, it was a pretty good game by G2. Honestly, if the compositions were on the other side, I feel like G2 just like hard win the game. Like if you transplanted the top 3 on both sides and flop and switch them, I feel like G2 probably just like hard smash this game. Because of the way they were playing, I think that micro-wise they were playing pretty well. There were some mistakes that didn't need to happen, but they weren't as ever major as Fnatic's mistakes. And their macros was pretty good too. And when you get to that point where you're trying to aggress into like enemy jungle, it is fairly difficult to really get anything off because it requires Fnatic walking into you, which because of the composition they had, they didn't necessarily need to do that. But good game. I really actually enjoyed this, even though it was a bit of a stomp and there were a lot of kills. I think this was actually a genuinely interesting, engaging game. I've been Rojo.